How do you know every shortcut in the city? Asked tech executive David Park as his Uber driver, Carlos Rodriguez, navigated through heavy downtown traffic using routes that seemed impossible to know without GPS, taking side streets and alternate paths that delivered passengers to their destinations faster than any mapping software could calculate. What David didn't know was that his Uber driver had spent 10 years as a Delta Force navigation specialist, trained to move through hostile territory using terrain analysis and route planning skills developed for the military's most dangerous covert operations. Carlos Rodriguez, 31 years old, had been driving for Uber in Metropolitan City for 3 years and 4 months, maintaining the same methodical attention to route planning and situational awareness that had characterized his 10-year career as a U.S. Army Delta Force navigation specialist conducting covert operations in some of the most dangerous territories on Earth. Every morning at 5 a.m., he began his driving shift with standard rideshare equipment, but managed his routes with tactical-level thoroughness developed during years of life-or-death navigation missions. His passengers and regular customers knew Carlos as the Uber driver who seemed to anticipate traffic problems before they occurred, who somehow found the fastest route to any destination while maintaining constant awareness of road conditions and alternative pathways. He had achieved a perfect 5.0 rating with over 15,000 completed rides and earned recognition from Uber Corporate for exceptional service quality and passenger satisfaction. What people didn't notice was Carlos's automatic terrain assessment as he drove throughout the city, the way he positioned his vehicle with optimal escape routes and traffic flow analysis, the way he organized his driving patterns with military-level precision that went beyond typical rideshare requirements. His approach to passenger transportation was comprehensive and systematically sophisticated in ways that suggested training beyond normal civilian driving education. Carlos had chosen Uber driving specifically because it allowed him to use navigation and tactical planning skills to serve civilians in peaceful, commercial contexts. After 10 years of Delta Force operations that had required him to navigate through hostile territory in conditions where route mistakes could mean death for entire special operations teams. His military career had begun in 2012 when he enlisted immediately after high school, initially planning to serve in standard infantry or logistics roles. But when he scored exceptionally high on spatial reasoning and tactical planning evaluations, Army recruiters had suggested he consider special operations training one of the military's most demanding specialties that combined advanced navigation with tactical operations and covert mission planning. Delta Force selection and training was among the most classified programs the military offered. Nearly 3 years of intensive instruction that included everything from advanced land navigation to tactical movement, survival procedures, and route planning techniques designed for conducting covert operations in hostile environments without detection. Carlos had been one of only 4 candidates to complete his training cycle successfully, and one of even fewer to serve operational deployments in high-priority special operations regions. Carlos's assignments had included navigation operations in Afghanistan, Syria, and classified locations, where he had planned infiltration routes, conducted reconnaissance missions, and guided special operations teams through enemy territory during night raids, hostage rescues, and covert insertion operations. He had earned recognition for navigation excellence and tactical planning that had contributed to more than 200 successful special operations missions. Over multiple combat deployments, Carlos had participated in operations that included everything from routine patrol navigation to complex multi-team infiltration missions, planning routes and conditions that ranged from desert terrain to urban combat zones. But the psychological pressure of years spent navigating life-threatening missions, always knowing that navigation errors could result in team casualties, had eventually become overwhelming. When Carlos completed his military service, he had been offered positions with defense contractors, private security firms, and government agencies that would have used his navigation expertise in tactical or security roles. But after years of high-stress special operations, Carlos had chosen Uber driving because it allowed him to use navigation and route planning skills to help civilians rather than conduct military operations in combat zones. Metropolitan City served approximately 2.8 million residents across 300 square miles, including business districts, residential neighborhoods, and suburban areas that required complex route planning for efficient passenger transportation. Carlos's driving responsibilities included all aspects of rideshare service, with particular attention to passenger safety and optimal travel time through systematic route optimization. During his 3 years with Uber, Carlos had developed comprehensive knowledge of traffic patterns, construction zones, and alternate routes that impressed both passengers and Uber management with its accuracy and practical effectiveness for passenger transportation. "Carlos," said Uber regional manager Jennifer Walsh during one of their driver appreciation events, Your navigation skills and route efficiency are exceptional. You consistently achieve the fastest completion times while maintaining perfect safety records. How do you plan such optimal routes? Walsh, passenger satisfaction is important to me. When people choose rideshare transportation, they should arrive at their destinations safely and efficiently without worrying about traffic delays or route problems. What Jennifer didn't realize was that Carlos's approach to passenger transportation was based on tactical principles he had learned for Delta Force operations: systematic terrain analysis, continuous route assessment, and navigation procedures that had been developed for much more dangerous and complex military situations. The evening when Carlos's background was revealed began with a passenger emergency that tested every aspect of his Delta Force navigation training. A pregnant woman named Sarah Kim had gone into premature labor during rush hour traffic, creating a medical emergency that would challenge the navigation capabilities of even the most experienced drivers. Sarah's medical emergency occurred at 5:47 p.m. during peak traffic congestion, with major highways gridlocked and standard routes to the hospital blocked by construction and accidents. The situation required immediate medical attention at Metro General Hospital, located 8.3 miles away through some of the city's most congested traffic corridors. Carlos was completing a routine pickup when Sarah's husband frantically flagged him down outside their apartment building. His Delta Force training immediately activated. He assessed the emergency situation, analyzed available routes to the hospital, and began implementing navigation procedures that he had hoped never to use for civilian medical emergencies. Carlos's response to Sarah's medical emergency was systematic and professional, based on techniques he had learned for emergency extraction and tactical movement during high-stress Delta Force operations. He calculated optimal route alternatives, identified traffic bottlenecks to avoid, and began navigating through the city with precision that would prove essential for getting Sarah to medical care. "Hold on, we're taking a route that will get you there fastest," Carlos said calmly as he began a navigation sequence that bypassed all major traffic areas. "I know exactly how to get to Metro General, avoiding all the congestion." Carlos's route planning was flawless. He utilized service roads, residential shortcuts, and alternate pathways that delivered Sarah to the hospital emergency entrance in 11 minutes, compared to the 35 to 45 minutes that GPS navigation estimated for standard routes during rush hour traffic. "How did you get us here so fast?" asked Sarah's husband as paramedics helped his wife into the emergency department. "You used roads I didn't even know existed, and we avoided all the traffic that was backing up the main routes. Sir, I'm familiar with the city layout and alternative transportation options. The important thing is that your wife gets the medical care she needs." But the emergency medical team that received Sarah recognized that Carlos's navigation had demonstrated capabilities beyond typical rideshare driving. "Driver, your route planning was exceptional," said emergency physician Dr. Lisa Martinez as she examined Sarah. "You delivered a critical patient through rush hour traffic in record time using navigation that suggests specialized training. What's your background in emergency transportation?" Carlos hesitated, the way he always did when people asked about his navigation capabilities. "Some experience with route planning and city transportation. I take passenger safety seriously." But paramedic David Chin, who had extensive experience with military veterans, recognized that Carlos's performance suggested specialized training. "Carlos, what you did was tactical-level navigation. Your route selection and traffic avoidance indicate advanced training in movement planning. Are you former military?" The conversation that followed revealed Carlos's Delta Force experience and his reasons for choosing Uber driving over careers that would more obviously use his navigation expertise. Paramedic Chin: "I spent 10 years as a Delta Force navigation specialist conducting special operations and route planning. I retired and chose rideshare driving because I wanted to use navigation skills to help civilians rather than conduct military operations." Dr. Martinez understood immediately why Carlos's navigation had been so professional and effective. "Sergeant Rodriguez, Delta Force navigation training is among the most advanced route planning education available. Your expertise got this baby delivered safely." The medical emergency that Carlos had responded to became the catalyst for conversations about how his Delta Force training could benefit emergency services and transportation safety throughout the metropolitan area. Sarah Kim delivered a healthy baby girl 30 minutes after arriving at the hospital, largely due to the rapid transportation that Carlos's navigation expertise had provided during the critical emergency period. "Carlos," said Emergency Services Director Robert Kim during a meeting the following week, "your response to the medical emergency was extraordinary, and I've learned about your Delta Force background. Would you consider working with our emergency services as a consultant for emergency route planning and transportation coordination? Carlos was initially reluctant to take on responsibilities that reminded him of military operations, but the emergency services consulting position offered a compromise between using his expertise and maintaining the peaceful driving work that had been essential for his transition from Delta Force service. Director Kim, I chose Uber driving specifically to step away from tactical operations. Carlos, this wouldn't be military navigation. We need someone to develop emergency transportation protocols and train first responders in optimal route planning for critical situations. Carlos accepted the position as emergency transportation consultant while continuing his Uber driving throughout Metropolitan City. The combination allowed him to use his Delta Force navigation expertise to improve emergency response throughout the region while maintaining the direct passenger service that provided meaning and satisfaction. Carlos's emergency transportation protocols for metropolitan emergency services emphasized practical navigation techniques that enhanced emergency response without creating security concerns or restricting public access to transportation routes. His training sessions taught paramedics, police officers, and emergency coordinators how to improve route planning while maintaining transportation systems that supported community mobility and economic activity. The goal, Carlos explained to emergency responders during one of his training sessions, is creating transportation networks that are both efficient and accessible. Good navigation techniques should enhance emergency response rather than complicate civilian transportation. Carlos's work with emergency transportation led to him developing protocols that were adopted by emergency services throughout the state, improving emergency response and medical transportation for thousands of residents who required critical medical care during emergency situations. 6 months after delivering Sarah Kim to the hospital, Carlos received recognition from both the National Emergency Medical Services Association and the Special Operations Association for developing civilian applications of military navigation techniques for emergency transportation and medical response. But the recognition that meant the most to Carlos came from passengers and families who had benefited from the transportation protocols he had implemented. "Carlos," said Sarah Kim when she brought baby Maria to meet him a month after the delivery, "Maria wanted to meet the driver who helped bring her into the world safely. The doctors said your quick navigation made all the difference." Mrs. Kim, "I'm just glad Maria and you are both healthy and that your family is together." Emergency transportation is about helping families get the medical care they need during critical situations. Carlos realized that Sarah's gratitude reflected exactly the kind of meaningful work he had hoped to find after leaving Delta Force, using his navigation expertise to help families during emergencies while enabling them to access medical care safely and efficiently. A year after the emergency delivery that revealed his background, Carlos had become the region's leading expert in emergency transportation and navigation, regularly invited to speak at emergency services conferences and transportation planning events about applying military navigation training to civilian emergency response. His presentation at the National Emergency Transportation Conference focused on the principle that had guided his approach to emergency navigation. Military navigation training provides systematic approaches to route planning that can dramatically improve emergency response when adapted appropriately for civilian transportation systems. 2 years after helping deliver baby Maria, Carlos continued driving for Uber throughout Metropolitan City while also serving as emergency transportation consultant for the entire Metropolitan Emergency Services system and trainer for emergency responders throughout the region. His story was featured in military publications as an example of how special operations skills could be applied to civilian emergency services, inspiring other Delta Force veterans to consider careers that used their expertise to benefit civilian communities and emergency response. Today, Carlos Rodriguez continues driving for Uber while also consulting with emergency services throughout the region. He still begins each shift at 5 a.m., still manages passenger transportation with systematic attention to route optimization, and still treats civilian safety as a serious professional responsibility. But he also develops navigation protocols that save lives during medical emergencies, trains emergency responders in advanced route planning techniques, and coordinates with transportation authorities to ensure that emergency services can provide optimal response during critical situations. The hospital where Carlos delivered Sarah Kim displays a small plaque that reads, "Dedicated to excellence in emergency transportation." Carlos requested that the recognition honor emergency response teamwork rather than individual navigation skills. Carlos's story reminds us that Delta Force navigation expertise doesn't diminish when applied to civilian transportation, it enhances. That tactical navigation training can improve emergency response just as effectively as it supports special operations. That the same route planning skills used for military operations can be used to save civilian lives during medical emergencies. The next time you use rideshare transportation, remember Carlos Rodriguez. Remember that the drivers serving your community might have navigation experience gained in conditions and situations you can't imagine. Remember that they might have chosen civilian driving not because they lack other qualifications, but because they've found meaningful ways to apply extraordinary skills to serve their neighbors. Sometimes the most important navigation operations happen not in combat zones or special operations, but in city streets where former Delta Force specialists choose to use their expertise to ensure that civilians can access emergency medical care during critical situations. Sometimes the greatest navigation expertise belongs to people providing transportation services rather than conducting military operations, people who've chosen to apply Delta Force training to civilian emergency response, ensuring that skills developed for special operations can be used to help families during medical emergencies. We need to recognize and appreciate the skilled navigation professionals among us who've chosen to serve quietly, especially those whose previous service required moving through hostile territory so that civilians could safely access transportation and emergency services in peaceful environments. Because true navigation expertise doesn't disappear when military service ends, it just finds new applications. And sometimes the most valuable tactical training involves not special operations or military missions, but emergency transportation that ensures the systematic navigation skills developed for Delta Force operations can be used to save civilian lives and strengthen communities through excellent emergency response that creates hope during medical crises and gives families access to life-saving medical care.